What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Dr. Fields. And before we get into anything, man, make sure you like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Say what's up, say whatever's on your mind. But hey, today you're going to learn how to speak. Today we're getting into that. What is class conflict? The question mark. But this one is from Halim Al-Ra. I feel like I butchered that. I apologize. But one of you guys told me to go check this one out. And again, I don't like going into politics only because I'm not sure what my side is. But then again, I do like going in them to see what each side is kind of dealing with, you know? What each side kind of thinks of how the country should be ran and shit like that. So, and again, it says Karl Marx, Class Struggle. I have a couple of books by Karl Marx because I feel like a lot of people say Marxism is bad and stuff like that. So I just wanted to know, like, why. So I got some books on it, and, you know, I'm reading it. I'm trying to figure things out. I feel like that's a problem. People say some shit, they be like, oh, you're a fascist, or you're a libertarian. Is that something people be on? I seen it on Twitter. Someone was saying that shit. Or communist and shit like that. But, like, people don't even know the history behind it. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I feel like people just need to look more into things in which they say, because, you know, that's what I'm trying to do at least. So, without further ado, let's talk more watching. And like always, all my political stands out there, all my triggered friends, let's get into it.
The concept of class and class conflict are both incredibly critical in understanding the nature of capitalism and the role of the modern state. The casual understanding of class is that it's got something to do with how much money you have. You've got the rich, the poor, and the middle class. However, the Marxist understanding of class is a much more precise and useful tool. And it's this understanding of class that I want to explore in this video. The first step in understanding what class is recognizing we are all fundamentally material beings. We are not these immortal creatures that exist outside the physical world. We are...
See, when I think of humans, you know, we need some type of structure, we need some type of rules in place so that we're not just out fucking destroying each other, killing each other and shit like that. So, like, having some type of, I guess, laws to follow is a smart thing. But then again, you know, I'm not really into that whole left and right thing, so
our material
gotta get more educated, man.
With material needs we must satisfy in order to live. So where the concept of class comes in is when we begin to ask how a given individual must go about satisfying these material needs. What means of sustenance are available to this individual? So a farmer's means of sustenance would be farming the land. Identifying the means of sustenance is another way of identifying how the individual relates to the means of production. Quick side note, the means of production, put simply, is the stuff that produces stuff. So when we ask how someone must go about sustaining themselves, it's a question of how they relate to this production line. And there's no one who's exempt from this production line. Everyone relates to it somehow. Alright, so the farmer's relation to the means of production are quite straightforward. He owns the land, he owns the tools, and he must labor the land to sustain himself. This would be his class. A given individual's class is determined by how one relates to the means of production. Now, on its own, this isn't particularly useful. Who gives a shit how someone relates to the means of production? The real usefulness of this concept of class is that it gives us insight into the material interests of a given class. Let's go back to the farmer for a second. We understand their relation to the...
It's weird, because when you think about middle class, you have like an upper middle class or lower middle class and the middle class. Because aren't doctors considered middle class? Hear me out, aren't they? And then police officers are also considered middle class. When I know doctors make a fuck ton. Well, it depends on the profession, I guess. But then again, I don't know, doctors do make a lot. But hey,
the means of production. They own the
it's
tools,
all
they own
fucked
the land,
up.
etc.
Because the top 1%
Understanding
is so
this,
far away
the
from
farmer's
us.
interests become quite clear. It's in the farmer's interest for good weather, a plentiful yield, minimal pest interference, hopes his tools won't wear down too quickly, and he hopes he can preserve his yields for as long as possible. His material interests are straightforward. Now let's suppose there are 5 friends and they're all farmers. They all have the same relation to the means of production. They all own the land together, they all own the tools together, and to sustain themselves, they must labor the land. So these individuals would be a part of the same class. And in being a part of the same class, their material interests are the same as well. They hope for good weather, good yield, minimal wear on tools, etc. None of their material interests are in opposition because they have the exact same relation to the means of production. Okay, so now we're going to add a bit of complexity to this. Suppose there's a 6th individual, and we'll affectionately call him Fuckface. So Fuckface
Jesus.
owns the tools and he owns the land. The other 5 don't own anything. All they have is their labor. Fuckface's means of sustenance, i.e. his relation to the means of production, is getting the other 5 to work his tools and land so he can eat. Fuckface occupies a different class than the
He's
others,
really calling him
as he
Fuckface.
has a different relation to the means of production, and thus has different and conflicting material interests. Fuckface wants to take as much of the yield as possible for himself, leaving just enough grain to sustain the other 5, but no more. The surplus grain he obtains can be used to sustain other individuals who may carry out the force needed to get the other 5 to work, or support a militia to take over more lands, etc. His material interests are to take as much of the yield as possible, whereas the 5 farmers, their interest is to keep as much of the yield as possible.
Why do I smell some bias in here? No, I'm joking. Probably,
To reduce their
honestly,
workloads.
gotta be.
The interests of Fuckface and the interests of the farmers are in conflict. It is not a cooperative relationship, but a combative one, where both classes struggle against one another. This society I've laid out is a society in conflict, and the only way to keep this society together is through the use of coercive and manipulative forces. Otherwise, this society would fall apart. Okay, so far I've been talking about class in this somewhat abstract and hypothetical sense, but let's bring this concept home. Let's take a look at our society, the capitalist society, and understand the classes that constitute it. Under capitalism, there are 2 distinct and primary classes: capitalists and workers. The relationship capitalists have to the means of production is that they own them privately. Their means of sustenance is getting others to labor on these productive means to produce goods and services to be sold. The relationship workers have to the means of production is renting their labor out. These 2 classes have distinct and conflicting material interests. Capitalists want workers to work as hard as possible and pay them as little as possible for their labor, just enough to sustain them
There you go,
and
dipshit.
propagate their race. The interests of the workers, on the other hand, is that they want to be paid as much as possible for the labor they do. These interests are in direct conflict.
But then it's like, how do you scale that? Like, how? Let me play devil's advocate, I guess. How would you know how much your labor is worth? You know, like, because I used to work at UPS, so like I was doing hella work for the same amount of money as motherfuckers were just throwing boxes in trucks. Like I was working the belts, I was throwing boxes in there, I was pushing carts with heavy ass shit. But like I feel like I was doing a little bit more than just people that were in the trucks. But we were all collectively doing a team job. But then again, you know, I was doing more things, but we all got paid the same. So like how do you scale that? Like how do you value one's labor? Like how hard they work? 'Cause there's just gonna be some bias to it. I feel like there's no way you can do that.
These classes
I feel
are
like
in
there would
direct
be
conflict. It is not a
Conflict.
cooperative relationship, no matter how many times capitalists say otherwise. It is a combative relationship and a relationship of exploitation. The workers are the ones who generate the wealth, and it's the capitalists who skim the surplus generated and keep it for themselves. To further the interests of
Not
one
wrong.
class is to necessarily hurt the interests of the other. Any policy that claims to be beneficial for both classes is a lie, plain and simple. Our capitalist society is a society in conflict. The only way this society is held together is through the use of coercive and manipulative forces. This is the primary
with that.
role of the state, a tool of oppression used to protect the interests of the capitalist class by holding together and maintaining this exploitative system. In simpler terms, the modern state exists to secure the existence of the capitalist class and to advance their interests. Without the state, the capitalist mode of production would collapse. This conflict between the two classes is a conflict that cannot be resolved under capitalism, for this is the nature of capitalism. There are those who privately own the means of production, and there are those who rent themselves out. For this conflict, a conflict
I feel like that's
between
really
two
fucked up.
diametrically opposed classes to resolve itself requires the ultimate break of either class, and with it, the passing of capitalism. The capitalist class cannot exist without the laboring class. The
Facts.
ruin of the laboring
100%
class
facts.
spells the common ruin of all classes. The socialist sees the only legitimate way forward is the abolition of the capitalist class, freeing the means of production from private ownership and moving it into the common domain to be operated by all, democratically. This radical and revolutionary reconstitution of society not only spells the death of capitalism, but establishes a classless society as well. A society in which everyone runs and operates the means of production democratically is a society in which everyone's relation to the means of production is equal. This is what's meant by a classless society. A classless society doesn't mean a society in which everyone is the same in every single regard and any deviation from the norm will be put down immediately. It just means a
Jesus.
society in which everyone is equal in their relation to the means of production. That's it. As everyone relates to the means of production equally, everyone's material interests are congruent. There is no adversarial economic group with opposing material interests.
It sounds good.
All are equal. As there is no class conflict, the modern state as a tool of oppression is no longer needed. And thus, with a classless society, anarchists and communists see to ultimately do away with the state as a tool of oppression. If there's anything you take away from this video, it should be this concept of class conflict. In a capitalist system where there are two distinct groups with different and oppositional modes of satisfying their material needs, we find a permanent and unyielding conflict of material interests between the classes. This class conflict makes capitalism an inherently volatile system and necessitates the existence of the state to maintain this affair of exploitation. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you...
Good shit, young Bo. Fuck with that video. But yeah, man. I would like to see socialism work in the way that he made it seem. Because, I don't think... I'm gonna have to do some research. I don't think anyone's, like, really doing socialism like that, you know? Or... I want to say, like... Because communism is so different. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what y'all think about this. But hey, it's crazy. Definitely some flaws in capitalism. And a lot of questions about socialism. Because I know people want power. It's just a human thing. They want power. They want to abuse it. They want people to get under their wing and listen to what they have to say or do what they want to do. You know, it's crazy. But hey, appreciate y'all. Love y'all. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.